Maria Davis, a goal-setting coach that has been helping students and teachers achieve their goals for years, and I'm here to help you do the same. I believe life isn't about chasing after what you want. It's about accessing the unique power that's already inside of you so you can step into the life of your wildest dreams. If you're looking to do life differently, live a life that's designed just for you, make your dreams a reality, and ditch the hustle, then you're in the right place. My goal for this podcast is to give you tools, resources, and tips to discover who you are at your most authentic level, help you get back in the driver's seat of your life, and send you love and encouragement along the way. Welcome to It's the Audacity for Me. Hello, and welcome back to It's the Audacity for Me. We are on episode 2, and this week we're going to talk all about having the audacity to live sustainably. When you hear that, you are probably thinking of reusable straws and, renewable energy sources, but there's some aspects that we don't typically talk about when it comes to sustainability, and that's related to people and economics. So there's 3 pillars total when you include the environment, and we are going to talk about all 3 and look at ways that we can live more sustainably, both for ourselves, the people around us, and our environment. So I am excited to dive on in. Let's go. So, what is sustainability? Usually, when you hear this word in today's society, it's referring to the environment. But in general, it is just the capacity to endure in a relatively ongoing way across various domains of life. And in our society, the way that the world is right now, environment's pretty important, right? We can see some ways that maybe we need to change our habits as a whole to make better use of or use less of our natural resources. But the reason that this word is so intertwined with the environment and humanity's use of the natural resources is because in the 60s and 70s, people really started to look at and question the increased environmental impact of our economic growth and development. So basically, sustainability as a whole is the ability to maintain something at a certain rate or level to keep it going, sort of like this indefinite wheel or cycle where, it can just keep going, it never stops. And again, environment's important here and probably the most important because if we don't have an earth, then, none of these other ones are really going to matter. But sustainability does have 3 pillars and they all feed off of one another. Just like I said, if we don't have an earth, the other 2 pillars aren't really going to matter very much. So we have the economic pillar, the environmental pillar, and social equity. So the economic pillar is just the ability of an economy to continue to produce and circulate money indefinitely. Basically just the ability of an economy to survive and ideally thrive. And it impacts, environment and social matters because when budgets are cut, when times are tough financially, economically, environmental programs are the first to go. Sometimes things that are environmentally friendly cost more up front just because it's new technology. But the good thing is we've got a lot of businesses, a lot of corporations, a lot of initiatives in general to make decisions that not only benefit humanity, but benefit the environment as well. But the economic pillar, of course, impacts social equity as well, because when you think about our economy, that's really closely tied to people's way of life and making sure that things are equitable among people. Because if our economy is not doing so hot, the people aren't going to be doing so hot either. There's going to be increases in poverty and unemployment when you've got a less than ideal economy. So you can see how this one pillar really, can feed into the others. I'm going to skip over environmental for just a second and talk about social equity because that's the other part that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about. So, social equity is basically just when a society can maintain social well being over the long term. And this is one thing that I think is really important on an individual and personal level because this is really where hustle culture and this rising grind mentality can be so toxic. Um, because if you think about your well being, can you maintain it in the long term when you are working 12-hour days and never taking a break? So think about the increased demands and hours outside of the traditional work week. And also think about the fact that the work week wasn't actually designed in a way that works for modern society. So, the 40-hour, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday work week was designed at a time when men were working outside of the household and women were typically at home caring for the children and, taking care of the checkbook and the cooking and all of those things. Um, we know now we live in this awesome society where women don't have to stay at home. They can work and they can do all these awesome things. We can. Um, but at the same time, it's kind of interesting, I guess. I definitely want to question how sustainable that is. Because if both people are working 40-hour work weeks, even if there's not kids involved, think about all the things that have to happen in a household just to keep it running. The bills that have to be paid, the random appliance repairs, and even, vehicle maintenance and doctor's appointments and just laundry and grocery shopping, all of the things that have to happen just to keep your life running. When both people and don't, if you add children to that mix, if you have children, you can definitely see how that can add up really quickly, all of the things that have to happen. But is that sustainable for two people to be working and maintaining the household? One thing you can think about with that is the cost of daycare. If you have very little children, or maybe you did and they're a little bit older now, or even if you don't have kids but for some reason have looked into the cost of daycare, it's almost not worth it to go out and get a job when you have very little ones, especially if you have more than one, because the cost of daycare is just about as much as you're making at work. So if you are the parent of very little ones, I definitely understand that struggle. And that's why I'm all about trying to find ways that work for you and ways to be balanced where you're not doing this all the time, running around, rushing, and because it's not sustainable. So, if we don't have this social equity, if people's lives in general aren't sustainable, and then society as a whole isn't sustainable, people don't there isn't well-being. Excuse me, environmental issues tend to become less important when there's civil unrest, when there's not equality, um, or things just aren't equitable. Economies suffer too, right? There's people at the high end, there's people at the low end, and that's not sustainable. Last but not least, the environmental pillar. I'm sorry, I can't talk today, guys. The environmental pillar is arguably the most important because we really are using our natural resources faster than they can replenish. Um, there are so many issues with pollution, trash in our oceans, plastic, running out of oil, clean water. I mean, you name it, and you can come up with an environmental issue to want to address, or things that need our help in the environment. And if we talked about this earlier, I said this earlier, if we don't have an earth, then we certainly aren't going to have people living their best life. We aren't going to have a thriving economy because we won't be here. So, if the environment struggles to support human life due to the depletion of natural resources, or we can't find and use alternative resources, people are going to suffer exponentially, both economically and socially. So, with all of that, I really want to look at some ways that we can live sustainably, both for ourselves and for our environment, and just society as a whole. So, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to look at some ways that we can live more sustainably. All right. So, let's not be gloomy, right? All of the things that we just talked about were related to ways that maybe we're not living sustainably, or I guess ways that we could do better. What can happen if we don't live sustainably? But I want to be super positive, right? Every single day, people are coming out with new technologies, um, all sorts of things, new efforts, new initiatives, things to help our environment, as well as our society as a whole, as well as our economy. So I am not one to worry about things. I am one that I want to know what I can do about it, because we're the only people that we can change or do anything. We can only change ourselves. So we can impact others by doing our part. So let's take a look at ways that we can be more sustainable, both for others and then for ourselves as well. So let's first talk about sustainability as it relates to things outside of ourselves. So the environment, other people, things like that. So, as far as the environment goes, there are so many ways that we can work to live more sustainably. We can practice farming techniques that don't deplete the soil as much, use more holistic approaches to a lot of things: diet, healthcare. Um, we can swap out some things in our house, right? We can swap plastic straws for metal reusable straws. And I actually recently saw they make these little keychains, and it almost looks like an AirPod case, but you can like take apart the straw and put it in there. I think it was at the dollar section at Target. So they're out there, they're easy to find. One thing that we do at my house is we really rarely use paper towels. So we use reusable napkins, and I have like cleaning rags. So we do have paper towels in case we need them, but we very rarely use them, just because we've gotten in the habit of using more environmentally friendly ways of doing things. I like to make sure that I look into the cleaning products that I use. Sometimes I make my own. It depends on how busy I am. But when I don't make my own, I look for products that have been verified, have very little impact on the environment and on my body as well. Right, taking care of yourself. You don't want to be using super toxic products that are harming you and nature. So, those are just a few suggestions. Reusable cups, reusable water bottles, recycling in general, especially if you live in an area that has recycling programs. I know not everywhere does, unfortunately. Another thing that we do at my house is we compost. So we're sending less to the landfill by using our food scraps, coffee grinds, things like that. And we put them out into the compost pile to create new, really awesome, just rich soil for our crops and things for the following year. So, those are some things that we do, some things that you guys could do to be more environmentally sustainable. And that's also going to play into economic sustainability, right? Because, and I'm talking for you personally, if you're not spending a ton of money every week on paper towels or plastic straws or, cases of water. If you're doing all these things reusable, you're really cutting back on a lot of expenses because you're not having to pay for things over and over and over again. It's kind of a one-time cost. So let's talk about the other side of sustainability, the social part, but also the internal part. With sustainability, right? We've got that social equity, right? We want to make sure that everyone in our society, they have this well-being that can be maintained. And again, we can't change society as a whole by ourselves, so we're just going to look at ourselves. And I want to look at productivity and how it can kind of become an addiction. And I do want to do an episode on that in the future, but just look at your schedule and look at where your obligations are and how much time you're really spending in different roles of your life. And really ask yourself, is this sustainable? Are you exhausted at the end of the day? Do you have time to hang out with your family? Do you have time to cook healthy meals? Are you giving yourself enough time to rest? Take a few minutes and just reflect on how your body feels. Are you walking around feeling like crap? There's a reason for that. You're not constantly supposed to be walking around bloated and with a headache and feeling nauseous, or I hope that none of you feel that way. But if you do, know that that's not sustainable. And you can certainly, change habits in your life and feel way better. Speaking of habits, this is a random checkup. Have you been drinking water today? If you have, how much have you had today? Most of us are walking around super dehydrated, and that's really not sustainable, right? And it's not contributing to our well being. And if we're not sustaining ourselves, we're not sustaining ourselves physically and mentally and energetically, then there's no way that we can contribute to an overall sustainable society if we're not sustained, right? We have to be okay to be able to contribute for other people. Another thing that I see going maybe a little, I don't want to say too far, but something that I feel like people can maybe be more sustainable with relates to diet and health goals and like working out and things like that. Because I see people go on these super extreme diets, and I've heard nutritionists and things like that say, that's not sustainable. That's not something that you can keep doing for your whole life. You can't just eat a head of lettuce once a week and expect to feel good. And people get really discouraged when they fall off the wagon or they eat a cookie or whatever the case. They don't work out for the 10th time in a day, and they're getting discouraged because that's not sustainable. They're not able to live up to that standard. It's not something they can continuously maintain. So, if you are on a diet or weight loss journey or health journey, fitness journey, whatever kind of journey that you're on, make sure that you really take time to reflect and think about how sustainable it really is for you and ways that you can make it more sustainable. Maybe look into more lifestyle based, I guess, diets, you could say, lifestyle based eating habits versus, these heavy, hard, extensive diets of these restrictive diets, because like I said, they're not sustainable and they're not healthy for our bodies. And if you want to be your best self, live your best life, you need your brain to be working at full capacity. You need your body to be working at full capacity. So make sure that you are taking time to love yourself. That includes boundaries as well, saying no when you have to. All right, guys. So hopefully, I was able to break down sustainability into all its pieces instead of the commonly discussed environmental piece. If you have any questions about this episode or you want to learn more, definitely check us out. Thank you so much for listening to episode 2, and I can't wait to see you next week. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for pressing play today. If today's chat inspired the audacity in you, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And be sure to leave a rating and review on iTunes to spread the love and help more people find the show. If you aren't already, be sure to follow me on social media so we can connect. Just choose your preferred platform. My links are all down below. Have a beautiful day, friends.